are we being agnostic or independent? Look, to some extent, being agnostic is part of being independent. Because if you are not agnostic, then you get pulled in by one side. Even today, we are sometimes pressed by countries to take positions saying some great principle of international relations is involved. I asked them, where were you when that principle applied to me? That the behavior of states, some of which Ambassador Sibal also referred to, has actually made a stronger case for maintaining strategic autonomy and promoting multi-alliance. Are we being agnostic or independent? Look, to some extent, being agnostic is part of being independent. Because if you are not agnostic, then you get pulled in by one side. But I do think that, I would argue that even in the past, you referred, for example, to the Indo-Soviet relationship. Even with the benefit of Indo-Soviet relationship, forget the Soviet Union. What we did was in our national interest. At that time, we were boxed in by a US, China, Pakistan triangle. We had to find a way out of it. This was not a time to say, oh, let me be neutral and this side has as much value as that side. There was only one side, that was our side. And that side dictated that whatever we had to do in our national interest, you don't approach the world about being fair and equitable when it comes to your national interest. On our national interest prevails. So the point there was we took what was the right decision at that time in the midst of an acute national security crisis. And over the years, today, we will take positions. Even today, we are sometimes pressed by countries to take positions saying some great principle of international relations is involved. I asked them, where were you when that principle applied to me? So, finally, I'm not, it is not my case that norms, rules, principles don't matter. They do. It is part of a stable management of the world. But in the final analysis, national interest trumps everything else. And to my mind, that should be the final test of foreign policy making. It has to be obviously explained and projected to different audiences in the best possible manner. But, again, because you mentioned it's a bipolar world, I would urge you to look at projections. The theme of this Aravalli conference is preparing for 2047. Please do look at what are fairly objective studies where India could be and should be by 2047. It doesn't look very bipolar to me. A lot of these arguments that, freedom of choice is equated with indecision, which is a clever subtext for saying align with me. I think we should call it out. We should say that, look, that's not the way I consider. When we were much weaker, we didn't do it. There is today no case to do it. In fact, when I look at the current trends in global international politics, I would argue that the behavior of states, some of which Ambassador Sibal also referred to, has actually made a stronger case for maintaining strategic autonomy and promoting multi-alignment. On the India-US issues, look, we have today issues with the United States. A big part of it is the fact that we have not arrived at a landing ground for our trade discussions. And the inability so far to reach there has led to a certain tariff being levied on India. In addition, there is a second tariff, which we have said, we publicly said we regard it as very unfair, which has picked on us for sourcing energy from Russia, when of course there are other countries who have done so, including countries who right now have a far more antagonistic relationship with Russia than we do. So I don't want to, I'm not minimizing the issues, but I don't think we should take it to a point as though this is going to percolate to every dimension of the relationship and there is something very fundamental at stake there. I think we need to see this in proportion. There are problems, there are issues. Nobody is in denial of it. Those issues need to be negotiated and discussed and resolved, which is exactly what we are trying to do. But I would really sort of hesitate to read very much more into it than the issues themselves. I think I also want to say a large part of the relationship is actually continuing either as business as usual or in fact in some cases even doing more than it was doing before. And